In my mind, there are three levels of guitars. There's the inexpensive starter guitar, there's the mid-range guitar, which is good for any amateur or professional use, and then there's the high-end boutique guitars. This applies to both electric and acoustic, but I only have enough electrics here in each range to kind of compare, so that's what we're going to focus on. So the question is, do you need an expensive guitar to record top quality music? Well, that's the question we're going to answer here today, and I'm even going to do a short, like minute-long song where I put them back to back to back so you can hear the comparison. Now, of course, all this is just my opinion going through the different things, but I kind of wanted to share that to you in case you haven't had a chance to look at the different levels of guitars yourself. But if you had or had a chance to compare a couple different ones, I'd love to hear, so jump in the comments below and let me know what you've had as an experience. Now, before we start, I'm going to roll my spiffy intro, which most definitely was not played on an inexpensive guitar. So as I said, we're going to compare the sound of three different ranges of guitars and a miniature little song. The first of those guitars is my daughter's Fender Squire, and one of these retails for about $250. The next is a mid-range guitar. This Schecter that runs about $1,000 is also equipped with this cool pickup that gives you infinite sustain. And then finally, this top-level PRS 25th Anniversary 513. If you can get your hands on one, it's going to be north of $3,000. Let's roll the mini song now and see what our ears tell us. Okay, you've seen them or heard them in close proximity to one another now, and there are other things that separate the quality of these guitars and make the prices what they are, but we'll talk about that in a minute. First, I have to say that doing this little experiment actually surprised me when I did the recordings. When I listened back to it, I expected a wider difference between the quality of the sounds, and yeah, they're different, but I would say the overall quality difference was kind of subtle. I actually found that I liked the sound of the Fender best on the clean stuff. That kind of twanginess that it has worked really well for that sound. Now, from the rhythm stuff and the more distorted stuff, it is a little bit one-dimensional by comparison. When you move up to the mid-range guitar, it gets fuller and thicker, of course, because the double coil pickups. And then with the 513, the sound gets a lot more three-dimensional. There's more character to it. And of course, I'm playing all this through a very high-end amp modeler. And if we're talking about inexpensive versus expensive gear, if you're using an inexpensive amp versus an expensive one, that's really going to make a difference. In any case, you heard it there, and you could get the comparison. So what do you think? Does it end the argument? Did it make a big difference from one guitar to the other? As I said a moment ago, there are other things to consider here rather than just the recording sound on something. You have the quality of the build, whether the things are staying in tune, and some of the aesthetic things as well. Let's talk about that with each guitar. We start here with my daughter's Fender Squire, which is a good entry-level beginner guitar. And if you know Fender guitars, they're kind of known for their twangy single-coil sound. But with the Squire here, they put a double-coil humbucking pickup in the bridge so that in the first position of the 5 that it offers, you can have a sound that's a little bit more full and usable for like hard rock and metal rhythms. Now, as an inexpensive guitar, this actually sounds pretty good. As you heard in the recording, you've got your 5 different selections, as I said, and they give you a pretty decent array of sounds as long as you want just that kind of Fender sound other than the one position. Let's take a look. When you switch over to the second position here, it starts to get more twangy and more like you'd expect from the single coil. When I move to the third position, we get the middle pickup. We go to the fourth position, get both of them. It's good for a very clean kind of picked. And then finally the neck pickup, which you could use for leads like I did in the example song. So you can see you have a few things to choose from with this guitar, but they're all kind of similar to each other, which is fine. You're looking for that Fender sound. So what makes the inexpensive guitar different? Why is it inexpensive? Well, one of the things you think about is the construction quality, how well it stays in tune, if it needs intonation changes, over seasons, things like that. I talk about this in all my guitar reviews. And with really, really inexpensive guitars, stuff under $100, they're going to be really hard to play and press the strings down. They're going to fall apart on you quickly. They're going to be constantly out of tune or unable to be tuned. With something like this at $250, a good level beginner's guitar and still inexpensive, you do have something that's playable. It's not as easy to play as one of the more expensive guitars, but it's not what you'd call difficult to play either. It's just something that resists a little bit more. And as far as tuning goes, it's not super stable for staying in tune. You might find yourself tuning it in between every song if you're doing a live set, especially if you have kind of a heavy hand. Every song or two, it's not going to stay in tune as well as the more expensive guitars. Okay, so let's move up a class to the Schecter, to a mid-range guitar, and talk about what the differences are. Right away when you strap this guitar on, you can feel how solid it is and feel a difference between it and what you would consider an expensive guitar. You also have something like the neck-through design of the body here, which makes it feel really nice when you play. You've got the edging over here on the top and the binding on the fretboard and some more detail work, things that cost more to put into a guitar and are reflected in the price. Now, one of the things you can get with less expensive guitars that I see come up more is things like the switches, the pickup switches and volume pots can tend to get dirty and you have problems with switching and sounds. They're easy enough to replace or just clean up, but I just see it come up more with them, and it's something that's happened with this guitar. You can hear here that noise, that static when I go to switch. The Fender does that a little bit as well. And when we talk about the construction here, we're also talking about things like how it stays in tune. As I said before, this guitar stays in tune really well. Now, it's a different type of guitar. You have the Floyd Rose tremolo here, which is meant for like those real heavy metal type of dive bombs, but it's got the locking tuners on it. And even if I leave them unlocked and I'm not heavy on the whammy bar, the guitar stays in tune very well. I might only have to tune it up like once during an entire gig. And as far as the sound goes, this guitar is designed more for a rock metal kind of person. We've only got 3 sounds to choose from. It's a humbucking pickup, and of course it's got the specialty pickup here, the Sustainiac, which it allows it to play a note forever, and I talk about that in that demo that I linked before. But let me just play the sounds for you so you can check out what it's about. Now right away you can see it has more output than the other guitar, and it's a thicker, fuller sound, but that's partially because we're talking about humbuckers versus single coil. But even if you're comparing the first position and the other, the humbucker to the humbucker in this definitely has a more full sound. I switch to the middle here. And then finally at the neck. So again, it's a limited sound palette that's meant for one certain type of music or one certain type of sound, but they're decent quality sounds for what they are. Now let's take the big step up to the boutique expensive guitar with the PRS 513. The first thing you're going to notice when you pick up a guitar of this caliber is that it's really, really easy to play. I like to use the adjective buttery when I talk about how easy it is to play something. And as you go through the ranges of guitars, when you get up to boutique guitars and guitars that are handmade especially, There's just a difference in the feel. You know it when you play it, you can feel it in your hands, and it's kind of hard to describe that on a video, but part of it comes down to that kind of butteriness. When you start with an inexpensive starter guitar, a good one at least, it's not, as I said, it's not resisting you. It doesn't feel like it's difficult to play, but you do notice the difference when you pick up something like this or go through the range of the 3 different kind of levels of guitar. They get a little easier each time. And of course, with a guitar like this, you're paying for aesthetics. It has this beautiful top. Again, you have the binding on the fretboard here, and this cool little wood trim over here, and the inlays, the outlined inlays. All these things are fine details. Locking tuners, this thing, you have to work hard to get it out of tune. I almost never have to tune it in a gig, maybe once. I mean, if it's sitting in the room, I might tune it once a month. And as far as the sound goes, now we're talking about a wide sound palette. A guitar like this is built for someone who wants to do all different types of songs on one guitar rather than switching guitars. This is called the 513 because it has 13 different sounds. You have this 5-way switch here, and then you have a 3-way switch here, which changes the quality of each one of the other sounds. So if I have just like the basic bridge pickup here in this first position of the 3-way, it's a little bit of a single coil, kind of more twangy sound, if you will. And then you bring it down all the way to the other end, and it gets more like a rock metal kind of pickup. And that's using the same sound as I did before. It almost becomes more distorted just from the output of the guitar. And then the middle setting is kind of in between the two. I can move it over a couple positions, just play the middle pickup over here and get that kind of twangy blues sound again. Little Stevie Ray. If you know the name of that song, put it in the comments below for some extra bonus points. And then we switch over to the neck where you'd play the leads, that kind of thing. I'll put it on the really rich double coil sound. Now, I'm not going to go through every sound that this guitar offers, it's too many, but the idea is that as you go through ranges of guitars and you get up to higher end guitars, usually you start to have more of a wide sound palette and the ability to use the guitar in more situations, whereas with a starter guitar, it's kind of going to be customized towards one situation. This isn't always the case, but in general, I found that to be a truism. All right, I'm going to sum this up and just answer the question most plainly. No, you do not need an expensive guitar to make top quality music. Yes, you're going to appreciate the build of it, the quality, not having to tune it a lot, how easy it is to play, probably the aesthetic as well. And maybe when you move up to a real high-end guitar and you have a wide sound palette, it'll let you have one guitar to do many things instead of having a few different guitars for different types of musical applications. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I will get back to you as soon as I can. And until next time, guys, keep making great music. Hey friends, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. It makes the whole world better.